Welcome to today's masterclass. My name is Jose Rivera. I'm the CEO of CSIA, and I will be your host today. We are CSIA, a global nonprofit trade association with over 500 members in 35 countries. For system integration members, the CSIA Best Practices Manual and CSIA Certification are some of the most popular member benefits. But you will also enjoy a variety of others, including professional development, learning from your peers, and access to professional service experts, including insurance, finance, and legal, who understand system integrators' unique business needs. For partner members, CSIA offers an ecosystem to grow your system integrators program, understand your customers' pain points, monitor industry trends, and share your thought leadership. With thousands of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange helps system integrators, industry suppliers, and manufacturers connect and do business. For SIs and partners, it provides a platform to support your content and search engine optimization marketing efforts, position yourself as a thought leader, and nurture prospects during their complicated buyer's journey. The good news is that it is actually a great time to join CSIA because companies that join now will get the rest of 21 free as part of the 2022 membership package. Get to www.controlsys.org/shine to get your details. Before I introduce today's presenter, I want to remind you that we have a Q&A and we have a chat function. Use the chat to communicate and network with all your peers, but use the Q&A for the questions you want to address to the presenter. We will get to the questions at the end of the event. And so now I would like to introduce Tony Balasek, the Director of Engineering at Premier System Integration. He's also the chair of our CSIA Best Practice Development Committee. So without any further ado, Tony, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose, and welcome everybody. Today we'll give you some information on how we get to the best practices manual each release and what's the process of doing that, as well as give you some few updates that you can expect to see when this next revision rolls out here in 2022. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. All right, so jumping right in, what we're going to cover today is I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about the value of pursuing a CSIA certification. We're going to talk about the process a little bit. How do we make these regular revisions, focusing on the continuous improvement efforts. We're going to explain why we include end users and vendor partners and get their feedback. The importance of beta testing for what we do here. Again, just some key changes or the most significant changes that you can see for version 6. And I'm also going to give you some level of a schedule so that you can get a heads up on when you can expect to see these things come your way. So jumping into the value of certification, you know, one of the research, if you will, that we do have is that the CSIA certified companies do perform better than the non-certified companies. And you can see some stats here. So, you know, revenue per employee, revenue per funded employee, if you will, utilization numbers. You know, these are significant numbers. 20%, 10%, even 10% are good numbers if you think about utilization in our business. Our labor multipliers are higher. So, you know, we do see statistics that do back up that there is a correlation between CSIA certification and performance within the integration group. Just note that CSI does have a program called CSI Pulse, in which this data was generated from. At the time, there were 34 members that were contributing to that, and roughly half, 19, were certified and 15 weren't certified. So that's a little bit of backup to where this data comes from. In the US, what we do see, and just want to make sure that you do see this is not across everybody, but it is the U.S. companies. You can see that this growth is substantially higher in some years than others, and I think that is an attribute to the kinds of companies that are certified. I often get questions when I'm at the executive conference or some of my peers, and they'll ask me, "Hey, why is Premier System Integrators certified? Why did you do it? What's the value?" And for me, the answer is pretty clear. It's really, I think the question should be, what kind of company should be looking at certification rather than want to get certification. So for us, our company is certainly very CI oriented. We're always trying to improve. Our culture is built that way, and when you have that type of culture, you're always looking to improve. Well, part of that improvement is benchmarking. And if you do that correctly, you're going to go out, you're going to look at your competitors the best you can, find those companies that you can compare yourself to, and see how you stack up. Where are the gaps? Where are you doing better? Where can you improve? And this organization, CSA, gives us that venue. So for us to be able to stack apples versus apples, this is a good opportunity for us to do so and show us where we are either leading or potentially lagging in some areas, and helps us improve year over year. We've been certified quite a few times, 6 times, and I can say that every time we've done it, we've improved, and that is because of that type of culture. So if your company has that type of mindset as well, then I'd certainly encourage you to look into CSA. I do think it would provide a tremendous value for you. You can see some of the key attributes of those organizations, what it takes to become best in class, and I think that this is definitely a good support for that. All right, I'm going to move into the regular revisions. What is the process? Well, our process really starts with the people. This is a volunteer army, and we're very appreciative to have these folks. Also, it's nice to see that we do have a bit of, if you will, succession planning. So I've been chair recently, but I couldn't come in here and have done this without the support of the people, the giants, the shoulders that I'm standing on, if you will. So special call outs to Eric Schaefer, Jeff Miller have been tremendous mentors in this process. But the rest of this team is highly valuable. Without them, we wouldn't be able to make this happen. So I definitely want to put a plug in. If you want to get involved, give me a holler, give Jose a holler. We'll talk to you about it, see if it's something that would be a good fit for you, and if so, we'd be glad to have you contribute. So without these members, this process wouldn't exist. So the process is pretty simple. It's involved. It takes a lot of time, but the process itself isn't very complicated. We pretty much take the sections of the manual, and we break that up into each section and assign people that are on the committee to each section, between 2 and 4 people each section. We get a lot of feedback from, let's say, auditors on where people are failing, where people are struggling, those sorts of things, as well as any other feedback that we get from our peers and through other conferences. And we take all that into consideration. We chunk it up. We decentralize it, if you will, and divide and conquer. So we take everybody takes their sections. We get that data. We make our updates, and then we take a small group review process to that. In other words, we take some people that weren't on the update for that section, and we take another 3 or 4 and say, "Hey, would you go review our work?" And then so we kind of divide and conquer it that way. And again, this is over months of time. And we come back, they give the feedback, and then we a little bit of iterative. And then once we're ready to do, once we're pretty good and set on where we want to be, then we open it up to the full committee for review. And then everybody gets an opportunity to look at every section, if you will. And it's a little cleaner state, if you will, at this point. Not so many notes and drafts and those sorts of things. And then once everybody's good with that, then we reach out and get our customer and partner feedback. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And then we're really getting near the end on final edits. And we get the auditor updates, and they're looking at as far as, hey, what did we recommend to change, and those sorts of things as it relates to audits, They give us their feedback because obviously they are dealing with integrators all the time. After that, we look at it from a legal review perspective, making sure that one, CSIA is not putting something out there that would get either the organization itself in trouble, or certainly anybody in the integration space that would be questionable. So we get that done, and then we're ready for beta release. Well, the beta release will get out there, and then we try to pilot between 5-10 integrators that are up for recertification during that time. I want to make sure that I'm clear there. That's not new certifications that we pilot with, but it is companies that are at least familiar with the process, so that they can do a pilot if they'd like. They get the, against the new version, in this case version 6. We get that feedback back, and then we release version 6. So that's the process. Again, that does take a considerable amount of time, measured in years. And how do we accomplish that? We meet each month for an hour formally. Of course, there's homework assignments in between. So, but I'd say we probably spend anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a month at most per person, maybe a little bit more towards the end here. And then any shared repository, we do share files and notes and keep notes. We do that currently in OneNote, and we have some access to OneDrive. So the process, again, very simple, but very involved. So moving on to the next point here. And I wanted to speak a little bit about, why do we include end users? Why do we include vendor partners? Well, there's really, I'm going to try to keep this as concise as I can today. And end users, what that does give us is it provides a perspective to make sure that the things that we're covering in the best practices manual will provide value to them, the end user. And another way of looking at it is if we ask the end user, what do you want your system integrators to focus on or get better at? That's the kind of questions that we need to answer within the best practices manual. So it's just another way of looking at it. For us and for them, it's a bit of a risk mitigation process there. So that also helps them say, hey, this is we need the integrators to really pay attention here to help us out. So that does give us that bit of perspective and insight. On the vendor partner side, it's a bit of it's a back and forth. It's a little bit of a win-win here is the way I look at it. So for them, it gives what they give us as integrators is advanced knowledge at times of any upcoming technological advances, and maybe how would it change how we do things in the future? How would it change their certain processes as they provide solutions for their market? And then for us to them, they get a little bit of insight on, hey, what do we as the integrators think is important? Where are we getting pressure to improve? Where are we getting pressure to change or implement new ideas and things of that nature? So it really is a win-win, and we're glad to have the partners involved as well as any of the end users. Number 4 here, beta testing. Let's talk about that for a couple minutes. So beta testing is important for us. It really helps us hone in on it. And first and foremost, this is probably the most important piece of this, is we just get to validate the substance of the changes. Sometimes it looks good on paper, and you put it in practice, it just doesn't taste as good. So this gives us that opportunity to make sure that, hey, are the changes that we made, are they good changes? Do they help integrators improve? The other thing it gives us is the ability to assess how clear the document is. We do make substantial editing changes, formatting changes, things like that, consistently getting better. We want to make sure that, this manual is evolutionary at this point, not revolutionary. That's why we're on version 6 versus version 1, if you will. So if we're missing big things or a lot of big things, then we probably missed something earlier. And so beta testing does allow us to make sure we're not missing any key steps. And then that clarity is important because names change, new lingo comes into the market at times, or better lingo in a lot of cases, and it allows us to adopt those things as well. The certification probability, we have to assess that in that, again, we do have a number of companies that that are certified. So we want to make sure that, hey, did we substantially change? Did we make it a lot harder to get certified? We don't want that necessarily, but on the flip side, we don't want to say that, hey, we've made it a lot easier. We don't want to lower the bar. We don't want to, dilute the value that this best practices gives you. Hey, if you're certified, you can say, hey, you can hold your head up high and say that, hey, we're a good company. We're doing all the right things. So we don't want to make it too easy to pass either. So we go on and make sure that we remain consistent across the board from revision to revision as much as possible. And then lastly here, generate some interest. We want people to say, hey, here's what's coming. Here's, I'm interested in seeing what's coming out in the next revision. How are we going to implement those things? How will it improve our company? So, we definitely want to generate some interest or create some buzz, if you will, for what's coming. So let's talk about what is coming. So what's coming in version 6? I've only listed what I want to consider the major changes, if you will, today. Again, every section was updated. Every section was clarified. More depth on certain points that we found out that wasn't as clear. So things like that. So every section was changed. The key changes that I would say for version 6 are, first and foremost, in the general management, we've added a business ethics section. So this is a very good addition to the best practices manual, I believe, and talks about a lot of things that we as businesses have to address on a daily basis. Things like conflict of interest, for example, export controls, things like that. Sales and marketing has had a tremendous amount of work as well on this revision, a greatly enhanced introduction. We're addressing digital marketing now, a little more on public relations and relationships, and they've done a fine job of helping us understand as integrators the role separations in those types of role, like an account owner versus a proposal manager, things of those nature, and clarify those roles so that it helps companies say, hey, we need somebody that can do this, or maybe it's just another hat that somebody's got to put on, but at least hey, these are very specific tasks that are a little different than some other areas. And then last but certainly not least, in our project management section, we've added, and basically we've looked at Agile and put some consideration in there for how to manage projects according to the Agile methodology. And then I think it's important to note that we shuffled the deck a little bit, where project quality was pretty much contained in the quality section. We've put more of that emphasis within the projects on project quality rather than the entire organization quality. So some good changes coming up here that I think will enhance your operations as integrators. And then lastly, I want to talk about the release dates and the timeframes coming up. So we're at this point, we're in this integrated review section. What I mentioned earlier was a full committee review. We'll finish that up in December, and then we'll be reaching out to our customer and partners. Should have that done by February, and then the final edits by March. Legal review just to make sure we didn't miss anything there, and expect a beta release sometime in April. Just wanted to throw a CSI executive conference coming up in June of this year. So we'll give you another update there where we're at. We should be pretty far along. Our pilots should finish up sometime in September. They will start much earlier than that with the beta release. But it does take a few months to get those back and making sure that we do incorporate anything that we learned there, with a full release expected in November of 2022. So with that, we're open for questions or comments.
So I am back, and I am the one that is now going to be reviewing the questions that have been submitted. So the first question is a request to access you via LinkedIn, and the person that wrote this is welcome to view you. You have a profile on LinkedIn. I have been there, so it's Tony Valasek. The second input was about the possibility of a company that is a startup company to join CSIA. If the question is, do we have a startup category? And so the answer is the membership of CSIA is staggered, and it's a function of the revenue of your company. So as a startup, I'm sure that the revenues are modest. So you would probably qualify in the smallest membership category, so the lowest fees. And I welcome you to join on our website. We have a tab that explains the details of the process and the cost. And there was a comment made about the data that you showed, Tony, about the comparison of certified versus non-certified on the KPIs, about a request to update that. And I want to make the following comment. That document that you saw and that we have used and continue to use, that was generated through an intense summer with an MBA intern. So I worked with him diligently, and also the provider of our benchmarking platform, iLumen. So that was quite a bit of an exercise. So updating it it's just like one of those projects that just needs to be put in the stack of things to do. But what I want to say is that CSIA has a benchmarking committee that reviews statistics and tries to figure out, what can we share with our membership that is of value. And the document, the white paper that was released this year, is incredibly interesting because it analyzes KPIs of companies over the past 4 years. So in this is an extended period of time. This data is provided by the participants in the Pulse program. It's voluntary. It goes through a third party, so I never get to see the data. But the KPIs come back, not showing whose KPIs they are. And we were able to create a group that we called the leading pack, and then compare that to the rest. And the leading pack is one that had the good growth and good profitability. So a combination of those two versus the rest. And there are some very interesting insights. And what I will say is that we are an association, and the work, just like this Best Practices Committee, is done by the committees. So similar to the Best Practices Committee, the Benchmarking Committee meets once a month, analyzes what can we do. And of the ideas that we have for next year's white paper is trying to analyze how system integrators went through this transformation and this pandemic crisis, and how it messed up, I think, everybody's finances, planning, and all these different things. But back to the point is that CSIA is an association, and members do most of this type of work. So I really want to thank Tony for representing here the Best Practices Committee. And I also want to thank the Best Practices Committee because it is intense work. It's really intense work. There's this document that you review, and this is the content. And then at one point is the details, all the details, statistics, if this is a controlled document. So if there are changes that affect the audit done by the auditor, we need to highlight that. For system integrators who are recertifying, they want to be able to go back and compare, well, how did we do last time? And make that comparable, apples to apples. So let me see, I think another question came in here. If we are interested in certification, but not yet certified to 5.0, does it make sense to wait for the release of 6.0 to schedule certification audits? I'll let you provide your input, but I have my opinion too.
Yeah, I'll start here, Jose. In my opinion, I don't think you should wait. I think you should get involved as soon as practical. Like I spoke to earlier, the CSIA versions really are evolutionary. And certainly if you get certified to version 5.0, we're a year out. So, that's a year's worth of progress that you could be making, and using using the data that's there, get involved, see what it takes, all the preparation and that sort of thing. And then you'd be ahead, and then you'll see what version 6 is all about as well. So it isn't like you can't get started on that any earlier, even if you're just not audited on any particular different points. But I'd certainly recommend getting started sooner than later.
I totally agree. And there's a related follow-up, which is with our audit schedule for next May, what is the possibility of getting a preview of the next revision prior to the beta release? Okay.
Well, I would think that, hey, if you're already if this is recertification, then you could be, if you want to contribute to the pilot process, you can certainly be considered for that. Absolutely.
And if you're not, what I would say is like there is plenty of material to prepare for a regular audit. Um, don't delay, just like you were saying before. I mean, just get started. And when we have this document, the 6.0 release, you will be able to go back in there, and we will be providing like a comparison to help you, start, getting ready for 3 years later, for the recertification. I will also say one thing. Okay, so certification is one of those programs of CSIA that has been around for quite a while, and with statistics we have been able to demonstrate, as Tony was showing, that there is an impact on your business. So some company owners have told me, well, we're not interested in growth. We just want to be our own bosses. And to me, that's fine too. But I think that one of the advantages of deploying best practices, and getting the benefit of somebody from the outside helping you ensure that they are properly deployed, is that you'll get a more robust company. And if you're not interested in growing, or if you're not interested in improving profits, which I respect your opinion, but what I will say is that it will improve the quality of your life, because you will be able to delegate, to have a team in an organization that is set up that allows you to delegate. And when you go on vacation, you don't have to be on the phone all the time. So just as basic as that. I know most system integrators want to improve their companies, grow, improve profitability, and the best practices help. And we have demonstrated that with the analysis that was shown before.
Yeah, I'd like to add something there, Jose. So, when I look at the CSIA certified companies, one thing I do see is a more consistent company across the board. They're more mature processes and things like that. And where that really will benefit a company is that when we look at disruptions to the market, for instance, the COVID pandemic is a great example. And what that did for us as a company, as Premier, is that it really demonstrated the importance of having standards, processes in place. That consistent machine of a company allowed us to weather a lot of storms. It proved to us that our systems work, our systems are prepared to handle things, and the contingencies, it lowered our risk. There's a lot of good things if you look at it from that perspective. It definitely helped us mitigate the crisis, if you will, and weather the storm, and come out of the other end looking a lot better than some other companies that have, unfortunately, have heard about. So
it's a great point. And let me also say this, because you were talking about resiliency. I remember in our 2018 conference, we had a panel of system integrators that were sharing how their companies went through. It was all in the month of September of 2017. It was Storm Harvey in Houston, it was Maria in Puerto Rico, and it was an earthquake in Mexico City. So like this coincidence of it all happening in the same month. So what they were presenting was how the measures that they have taken to ensure business continuity in disaster recovery, which is part of this best practices, had worked. And so imagine, you have one of these storms and it destroys not just your business or impacts your business, but also the people of your business. And you have to take all these measures. It was quite impressive, but it was also from a business perspective, very good to see what they did. And the member from Houston, for this person, it was not their first storm. So they were able to actually improve their plans from last time that they had a storm. And interestingly enough, in the best practices, you are required to test out your disaster recovery plans. I also see another question, and this is just to clarify, it's a partner, a tech provider that is interested in getting certification. And so let me now be very clear. The CSIA certification is only available to system integrators. Every CSIA member can download the best practices manual. Anybody can do this. That is a member. Okay, so it's a member benefit. And you can deploy it for your company. There are a lot of automation providers that have system integration teams, and that they would benefit a lot from deploying these best practices. And you're welcome to do so. But we cannot offer the certification for your company because it's a slightly different model. Just to be totally transparent about this.
There was a question about certification time period there above.
Yes, yes. Do you take this one? Do you want me to answer it?
Well, I want to make sure I'm clear on what the question's asking for. So certainly the certification is 3 years. It's good for 3 years. But if you're talking, if that's the question, that's that answer. If the question is more along the lines of from the time you register, if you will, or apply to get certified, how long does it take to get certified? That answer would be slightly different in that really it kind of depends on, is it your first certification or recertification? I think if it's your first certification, it's probably, I'd give you a more conservative answer in that you need to make sure that you understand what's in there. And it may, and for some companies, it may be a process of 2 to 3 years to get up to where you need to be. The size of the company does matter. There's level 1, 2, 3. Jose alluded to that. It's based on the revenue that your company is. So the bar is not as quite as high for a smaller integrator. But I would recommend a good 18 months if it's your first certification to get prepared. If it's a recertification, then maybe your first recertification, then less than that. If you have a pretty robust continuous improvement process in your company, then it should be just, I want to say it's like breathing, but it should be just part of your culture, and getting prepared for it isn't a heavy lift.
Yeah. And I will add one more thing. There are some system integrators that are ISO 9000 certified. So that provides an advantage from my perspective, because your company will have been used to documenting, organizing procedures, following procedures. So there's a table that compares our certification with ISO 9001 certification, and so you can bridge it. You don't have to redo it completely. ISO 9001 is maybe more prevalent outside of the US for system integrators than it is here, but in case you are, I'm just saying you can leverage that to your advantage. All right. So maybe like one more thing to mention when we go to our conferences. So we always try to look of what is new in for 22. We're going to make it about the future of work, and that means for the people, for the teams, it's the who, it's the where, which is a lot of virtual versus hybrid versus in person, but also applied to business development. And then the what means the newer things, digital transformation, and all those good things. But then we also have a category of managing the present. So we are going to provide the opportunity for this committee to update its members where we are with the 6.0. We will also have an opportunity for the benchmarking committee to talk about statistics applied to your business. But we always have, in the context of the conference, system integrators sharing, and sharing oftentimes is what drives us to create these best practices. So it's members of CSIA are very collaborative and willing to share and improve with that the overall system integration industry. And that's what is like really impressive about CSIA and all the committees working on these different topics. Okay, I think we're getting to the end of the virtual event. Let me share a few more slides and all right. So I want to thank again Tony and the Best Practices Committee for this informative session, and all of you for attending. I would like to remind you that there will be a recording available for this session in case you missed it or you want to have people in your company take a look at it. And be sure to visit our calendar of events, because we continue to deliver these weekly virtual events. This is what we have for the remainder of 2021. We'll take in a little break next week for Thanksgiving, and this is what we have. So I highly recommend. It's always a good investment. For more information about CSIA, this is where you can find us. And this is the detail of our conference that we're going to have in June of next year in Denver, Colorado, with the theme of the future of work. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.